About 3 weeks ago, Brother Chris asked me if I would share my testimony. And because of some issues that I'm having with some medicine I'm taking, we've decided to do it with a video. I went home and I told Janice that we're going to do a video, and she gave me some instructions. Y'all know Janice. She told me to sit up straight, talk slowly, and wear a clean shirt. Well, I did. I told her, since I'm doing a video, can you style my hair? Well, she did, and this is what you got. Okay, what I'm going to share with you is where I was before my salvation experience and where I am today. I wasn't saved until I was 30 years old. I grew up in Pascagoula, Mississippi. Not a heathen, but I was a Methodist. Methodists didn't stress salvation. I went to church every Sunday morning, every Sunday night, every Wednesday night. Went to all the revivals, went to Vacation Bible School, and when I was in MYF, I was dedicated and sprinkled when I was 5 years old. I didn't know what I was doing. They poured some water on my head. I was kind of shy and introverted as a young boy. I remember in MYF, I was 14 years old, and the guy that leading the MYF group that night called on me to close in prayer. And we sat there probably for, seemed like a minute. I didn't know what to do. I was scared. So my buddy was sitting next to me who could pray. I nudged him, and he prayed and closed it. That put a stigma on me for me praying out loud until I got saved, and that's part of my story. Janice and I started dating in high school. She was a year behind me. I graduated 1964. She graduated in 1965. She graduated in May. We were married in August and celebrate our 60th wedding anniversary this past August. She worked to put me through college in Hattiesburg. We came back to Pascagoula and continued to go to East Lawn Methodist Church. Now I got to talk about my softball experience because that's part of my witness. I played softball on a travel team. We played in Mobile, Jackson, Biloxi, Pensacola. We were good. We won a lot of trophies. In 1980, softball was big. You can ask Rick. Softball was big. But we played on Friday night, Saturday, and all day Sunday. And because we were good, we played Sunday morning. Not proud of that. Janice took our children to church and Sunday school. Sunday morning, you would find me on the softball field. I would come home Sunday night with a trophy, and Janice would be asleep usually. She wouldn't talk to me Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. We'd finally talk a little bit on Thursday, and I'm back off again on Friday. I'm blessed to still be married today. I had shelves built on both sides of my fireplace to hold my trophies. We started going to a Baptist church close to where we lived, Arlington Heights Baptist Church in Pascagoula. One night, a Tuesday night, Janice had gone to a meeting. I was home watching the World Series. The doorbell rang, and Howard Taylor, the pastor, and Eddie Cotton, a deacon, who was a friend of mine, came to see me. I think Janice had something to do with this. They came in and we talked. I got up and I walked over and turned the TV volume down because after all, it was the World Series. Those days, television didn't have remote control. You had to get up, change channels, and turn the volume on and off. I'm still watching the game as I'm talking to him. I'm kind of cutting over because Reggie Jackson's batting, and he's my favorite player. Eddie looked at me. We got into the conversation, and Eddie looked at me, and he asked me this question. Mike, have you ever asked Jesus into your heart and life? I looked at him. I said, I didn't know what to say. I said, no. He said, would you like to? I said, yes. I got up, went over and turned the TV off. We talked about a few minutes about salvation, about forgiveness of sins, about Jesus and the sinner's prayer. You got to remember that I'm a guy that if anybody asked me to pray, I would climb under a desk and hide. Okay, But that night, I got on my knees in front of my couch, and I remember this so vividly, in front of the pastor and a deacon, and prayed audibly out loud to ask Jesus into my heart and life. And I had this rush come over me that I've never felt ever again. And I want to think it was the Holy Spirit coming into my life. 2 weeks later, I was baptized at Arlington Heights Baptist Church. We moved to Grand Bay shortly after that. And all my softball trophies that I'd collected through the years that I was so proud of, I put in boxes and pushed out to the street for the garbage man. I started wondering, what can I do? Janice had always sang. She'd always sang in church. How can I serve the Lord? How can I serve the Lord? Well, one morning in Sunday school, we had a huge class. A friend of mine, Alan Glover, was sitting across from me. And he started talking about what a wonderful experience he had and what a blessing it was for him to teach 7th grade boys. And I said, man, what a nice thing that is. This is a God thing. I left that Sunday school class, walked over into church. Diane Vickers walks up to me. She worked for me at the shipyard. And she's on the nominating committee. She says, Mike, we're looking for somebody to take over 6th grade boys Sunday school. They're kind of rowdy. Nobody wants to teach them. Would you be interested? I said, well, let me pray about it. The standard answer. She turned away, took about 4 steps. I said, wait, Diane, I'll do it. So that, I really prepared for that. I studied hard, prepared for the lessons the next week. Went in, and she's right, they were rowdy. Grand Bay runs buses. They have 200 to 300 kids come in. I had 12 to 15 boys in my class every year. And I walked in, and they were rowdy, and I told them to quiet down, and they sat down. I had a guy, Ed, helping me. And they quieted down a few minutes. Well, there was one boy who kept cutting up, and he kept kind of getting everybody else cutting up. And I looked at him, I said, hey, take your chair and go sit outside the door. Ed, go watch him. Well, the room quieted down. And I'm thinking, well, I'll never see him again. Well, next week he was back. And the class was quiet from that point forward, and we had a good year. The very next year, the very first day of Sunday school, that boy comes into me and said, Mr. Mike, you see that boy right there? That's my brother. If he gives you any trouble, you let me know. Well, there's a lot of stories I could tell you about the boys over the years that I learned to love. Okay, one time this boy comes in. I always showed a film about Jesus at the first of the year to see where they were, how much they knew about Jesus. One time I showed this film, and this boy comes up to me, because they ran buses and brought boys in from all over the place. He comes up to me and he says, Mr. Mike, who was that man that did all that salvation, or saved all those people, healed all those people? I said, that was Jesus Christ. And he looked at me, and I looked at him. I said, you've never heard Jesus? And he had never heard the name Jesus. And he's 12 years old. Never heard the name Jesus. He kept coming that year. Don't know what happened to him. One time, a boy asked me to pray for his dog. I made the wrong decision. I told him, I don't pray for dogs. Wrong thing to say to a 12-year-old boy. Went into church. His grandmother comes over and sits down by me. She says, you have really upset him by not praying for his dog. So I looked over, and he's over there crying. So I get up, and I walk over there with her, and I sat down by him. I put my arm around him. I prayed for him, and I prayed for his dog, because it was a wrong thing to do. I learned. I see boys all over the place today. They're in their 20s that I taught in Sunday school. Mr. Mike, you remember me? You remember me? You taught me in the 6th grade. I was in Pensacola, Florida. Excuse me. One year we were going to a ball game, and the boy's taking up tickets. And he's on this side of the car with Janice. He said, Mr. Mike, you remember me? You taught me in Sunday school. And he's about 23 years old. And I did remember him. So I see boys all the time. I don't know, remember how long I taught. I know it's about 2015 2005 to 2012. I don't remember exactly how long I taught, but I had the privilege of leading 5 boys to receive Jesus. I've got their names written in my Bible. And if you've never done that, it's such a blessing to, through your heart, to lead people to Jesus. I couldn't wait to get in the car with Janice after each one of them to tell her their story. Leading one to Jesus Christ is the greatest feeling you can have. In 2012, we moved to Mobile up here to Dallas. Children's church, was grades 1 through 12. One person taught Sunday school 1 through 12. They decided to break it down into 1st through 3rd, 4th through 5th. I said 12, I'm sorry. 1st through 6th. They decided to break it down 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Janice took 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. I was asked to do 4th, 5th, and 6th. Well, every year I had 7 or 8, 3 or 4, 5. One year I had one girl. And I always ask her, do you want to go to Miss Janice's class? Because it's just me and you. She said, no, Mr. Mike, it's you and I talk. Well, we always gave the lesson, and we talked about Jesus, and basically a lot in the New Testament. One Sunday after Sunday school, she started crying. I said, what's wrong? She said, I want to receive Jesus. I said, I thought you did when you were 8 years old. She said, I know so much more now. I want to receive Jesus. So I said, wait a minute. I went and got Janice, because she's a little girl, came back over, and we led her to accept Christ, and I got her name written in my Bible also. 2017, I had a blood clot. Had to give up my Sunday school class. I was in the hospital for a week. And Jerry Bland took it over. Thank you, Jerry. I went into Brother Harold's class. One Sunday, Brother Chad comes to the door. Mike, can I talk to you a minute? And I went over there. What have I done? I'm going to be out of town next week. Will you take my class? Well, my heart went up my throat. I've taught kids. I've never taught adults. I'm thinking, I don't know adults. So I said, yes, sir. So I studied real hard. Went in there. Well, he had a message, okay? And that message was, we finally wanted me to alternate teaching with him. Well, 2019, COVID hit, and it took Brother Chad from us. After COVID, David often asked me if I would take Brother Chad's class. And I enjoyed teaching, but I had to study very hard, and I learned more from studying, from teaching adults, and I learned to pray by teaching adults. And I taught adults until I had an issue back in February, and Bill Riffle took over for me, doing a great job, and I love Bill Riffle and Linda. They're great people. I guess my message in all of this is share Jesus whenever you get a chance. You never know the impact it's going to have on somebody's life. Until I got saved, when Pastor Howard Taylor and Eddie came to my house that night, and I prayed and asked Jesus into my heart and life, I wasn't doing anything. I was coming to church and sitting on my hands. And if I hadn't got saved, I would still probably be doing that. We need to share Jesus. There are many ways you can share Jesus. The shopping for souls that these ladies did a month ago is a great way to do it. Ladies, they did it about 4 weeks ago. Joanne Kosher goes out, and she witnesses. I hear about it all the time in FedEx on her route. Ben witnesses to people. Amy in her job. And let me share this. Be creative. There's ways to share Jesus. Our grandson played baseball at Southern Miss in 2021, 22, and 23. There's a walkout song they do in baseball now. When the player walks from the dugout to the batter's box, they play this song, and it blares over the PA system. And at every home game, between 3,000 and 5,000 people are there. And most of these boys come up to the plate, had a boogie song of some kind. Well, Reese had a song by Casting Crowns called Nobody But Jesus. If you've never heard it, call it up and listen to it. This is the words out of that song he chose to play. I'm just a nobody, trying to tell everybody all about somebody who saved my soul. Ever since he rescued me, he gave my heart a song to sing. I'm living for the world to see. Nobody but Jesus. Nobody but Jesus. They have a website, Southern Miss baseball has a website, and there were so many positive comments over these 3 years about him sharing the gospel. Proud of him and the witness he had. So I'm not bragging. I'm just telling you a fact. There's ways to share Jesus. Pick the way you know and works for you. Janice and I are going through a journey now that I never envisioned. Back in February, they found cancer in my back. We went through a surgery, put a rod and 7 screws in me. I weighed 185 pounds when I went in. I weighed 158 when I came out 23 days later. I was on oxycodone and fentanyl. Yeah, fentanyl. The stuff being smuggled across the border. But it was a fentanyl patch. That was for pain. Today, by the grace of God, I'm off all of the pain meds. My weight's back to 174 pounds. I take 1 shot once a month. I take a few cancer pills every day. Feeling good, strong. Janice and I walk our dog over a mile 3 times a week. What I got is not curable, but it is treatable. I go back to the doctor in February, and I go about every 4 months. Each time I go, he gives me a great report. He gives me an A+ from the blood work he takes from me. So the shots and the pills seem to be working. I ask for your continued prayers. Where this journey leads, Janice and I'm good, because I know God is in control of my life, because someone shared Jesus with me when I was 30 years old. Thank you for listening.